This is a really special day for alignment. And I know some of you out there are brand new to coming to an alignment session. So a warm welcome to you. And to those of you who are not new, perhaps you've been anticipating this day, the launch day of the Calendar of Light. And last week, a couple of us were just wondering how many years have we done the Calendar of Light? So I looked it up to be sure. And this is, in fact, the 5th year of the Calendar of Light, for those of you who voted for 5, but it is actually our 6th calendar because one year we did a calendar for the time of Ramadan and Passover and Easter when they all happened at the same time. We called that daily calibrations for a month. So it's our 6th calendar, but it is in fact our 5th calendar of light. So it is absolutely wonderful to see you all tuning in to celebrate the launch of this with us. For those of you who are new, we meet in this space at this time every week. It is a really special space where we form community across traditions and across continents, across time zones, as you may know already, because you're on a different day or a different time from my setting sun here. But that's what makes it so special, that we can come together across these things that potentially could be dividing factors. But for us, this is a place that unites us, where we offer things from our heart and we get to know one another more deeply, even though we are in these squares, what Imam Jamal Rahman always calls squares of love, if you listen to him speaking. But in these days, when some of us have felt at a loss as to how to move forward or how to face all of the tragedy that we see and we hear about every day, one of the things we can do is this. We can come together and we can learn to honor and cherish the traditions of those who are different from us, to uphold them, to learn to pray together. And so the calendar of light is a way that we hold witness to that, that we uphold that. Every day is a short practice, no more than 5 minutes, 5 or 6 minutes at the most, for you to open the door and to have a practice that is looking for peace that comes within us and peace that comes from holding relationship with one another and looking for peace in the mystery of the world that is around us. So I was just, as I've been putting the finishing touches on the calendar these last days hurriedly for today to open, just looking at the beautiful array of traditions and people and places that are represented in this calendar. Just to give you a small spoiler alert, there are offerings from coast to coast across the United States. There are offerings from England, from Spain, from Scotland, from Australia, from China. There are offerings that are from Muslim faith leaders of the Sufi and Sunni traditions, Jewish offerings, Baha'i, Christian offerings that are Lebanese Maronite, Swedenborg, Quaker, from the Wild Church, from Presbyterians. We have indigenous offerings from those from the Potawatomi tribe, from Cherokee, from Pueblo, from Zoroastrians, from Hindu, Buddhists, Taoists, those who follow Qigong tradition, and pagans, those who identify as spiritual in unspecified ways. We have offerings from people who identify as artists and poets, musicians, chaplains, cantors, rabbis, imams, ministers, interspiritual leaders. It is quite incredible. And for me, it has been such a blessing, such a privilege to be the one who gets to compile these and facilitate this space. So I hope that you will find ways to use it that feel good for you, whether it's waking up each morning and opening the next door or sharing it with your community. There are ways, as maybe you have seen online on our website, that you can actually host the entire calendar on a website if your community has a website, or just share it on social media. All of these are wonderful ways to engage, and we hope that they feel meaningful to you. And also that you come back to this space where we have prayers and meditations and reflections from a different tradition each week. So I offered you a surprise, and the surprise was that if you have not opened the first day of the calendar, the person who has offered our first day is here tonight to share more about her beautiful work with us. And if you have opened the first day, then you have the treat now of getting to see it once again. So we're going to take a few moments and just open door number 1 together. And then I am going to pass it over to my dear friend. So bear with me while I try to do this correctly. And here is what the Calendar of Light looks like in partnership with the Iona community. And day 1 is open. And so I offer you day 1 from Urzula Glienecke.
Sometimes the dark seems to close up around us, above us, beneath us, within us. The world situation, cruel deeds, hurtful words, or just life. But at the very heart of the dark, there is a presence, a blessing, a loving touch, a compassion to carry us through. We are not alone.
So my friends, I welcome my dear friend, Urzula. Thank you, Urzula, for being here with us.
Hi, hello. It's a real honor to be here with you and a joy. My full name is Urzula Glienecke, or my old maiden name was Urzula Medding. I am one of the First Nations of Europe. My people, Latvian people, have one of the oldest languages in whole Europe. It's Proto-Indo-European. I can still understand some Sanskrit. It's very close. Some of the most important words, like, for example, cow, is almost the same. In Sanskrit, it is gov, and in Latvian, it is govs. And work in Sanskrit is darba, in Latvian, it is darbs. They are still very much that. We have been occupied by bigger nations for 2000 years, by Russia, So what is happening now with Putin is very, very close to us and very painful. By Germany for 800 years actually, by Sweden, by the big kingdom of Poland and Lithuania, and even Napoleon was there. It has been a long, long history. I just discovered quite recently that the longest and hardest serfdom, I don't know if you know much about serfdom. It's similar to slavery, just with the difference that the people who are serfs don't have a monetary value. They belong to the land. So whoever owns the land can do whatever they want to do. And the Baltic serfdom was the hardest and longest one in the world. And I just discovered recently that it ended just 40 years before my grandfather was born. So very much in living memory. I have seen many dark times. I grew up under Soviet occupation. I went on barricades for freedom of my people. I joined hands with people in all three Baltic states, holding hands through all the way for the world to see us, to have a chance of freedom, to have a chance of a new life. And we got that. And I started to study theology because I wanted to be a religious leader since I was a child. I started to study it as soon as the Faculty of Theology reopened, the beginning of 90s. And then it was taken from me because my home church, the Latvian Lutheran Church, excluded women from leadership. And so my journey has been a complicated one. I know a lot about dark and difficult times. I know a lot about fight and hope and finding hope in dark times. And that is where my poetry and my sculpture comes from. I am now a member of a Iona community, and I'm also an ordained minister in Church of Scotland. But as our very dear pagan chaplain at a University of Edinburgh, where I'm working, Jean said, once a pagan, always a pagan. So I'm still a pagan. The very first spirituality that I could live was pagan, because that was the first spirituality which was allowed in the Soviet times. Organized religion was more or less forbidden. It was persecuted. People were sent to work camps in Siberia. Many of my family and my friends died there, or people had to escape, so they became refugees, very often in small boats going out to Scandinavia or to Germany, and then sent on very often to USA or Canada or Australia, New Zealand, or other places. Latvians are all around the world right now. We are a very small nation. We are about 3 million only that still speak our language, but we have song and dance festivals which gather together people from all around the world in the spirituality and song and dance of our nation. And last time I was there, we had a choir of 16,000 people in the choir singing with 45,000 in the public and about, I think, 18,000 dancing. It is a huge, huge thing which still lives in a very small, small nation. And I have been welcomed to Scotland. I really love the word New Scot. Many people don't say refugee, they say you are a New Scot. And I have been living now in Scotland for 8 years. Iona community brought me here. I'm working now at the University of Edinburgh, which you can see as a picture behind me. That's the student union picture. And just trying to hold together. My experience through all the difficult times is community, being together, as many different people as we can be, holding each other's hands through difficult times and through joyous times, being out in nature, being creative, being together with animals, being us here on this one wonderful planet that we call our home. And diversity is one of the most beautiful things. And if you would like to, I would like to share some pictures of some of my sculptures that have been displayed in a week on Iona in Scotland, a tiny island. If you stand on the hill on the middle of the island, you can see all around it. But it has a lot of history. It has been a spiritual center, definitely since Bronze Age, but probably even since Stone Age, as many of the islands have been. And it has been very important in Celtic spirituality and is now as well. And it is very, very important to me as well. And one of the last weeks that I led there when I was leading program on an Iona as the program director was called Listening to Fragility. And the pictures are from this week, but the poems are much more recent. And I wanted to ask, is anyone here in this group Japanese speaking by any chance? No? Okay, that's fine. So the poems have been written during the lockdowns in English, but they have been translated into Japanese. If somebody could read Japanese, that would be nice, but if nobody can, we will only have English this time. So let me see if I can manage to share. Everybody see that? So the first poem I wanted to share with you is about the dragon. Droplets dripping, a fire dragon, laughing droplets of life. Every little droplet makes a ripple in the world. It matters. Every little thing matters.
Ursula, so beautiful. Can I
Mhm.
ask you, we have a comment in the chat from Larry. Could you tell
Yes.
us a little bit more about the what it's made of and how you created those sculptures?
Yes, of course. So I have been doing art since I was very little. I had very classical education. That was one of the very few good things about the Soviet education. So I learned drawing and technical drawing, sculpting, many other things. But I was looking for something different, and I'm not a healthy woman. I have psoriatic arthritis. So I used to work in stone. I used to work in marble and alabaster in Italy, in Tuscany, and I can't do it anymore with my hands. So I was looking for something different, and I found resin. So this is transparent resin. It is worked drop by drop. It's a very meditative process, and you can never recreate the same sculpture because it's like water. Wherever it runs differently. And they also glow in the dark. They have pigment which is used in children's toys. So it's not poisonous in any way and glows in the same colors as animals in the sea glow. So it's only greens and blues and yellows. And yeah, so this is one of my dragons. Unfortunately, its back is broken. It broke on the way to Iona, but it means even more to me that this broken back dragon still matters to me a lot. So each of my sculptures is unique. You can't reproduce it in any way. It just becomes as it becomes.
So beautiful. And the poem that accompanies this speaks so much to the process of the art as well.
It
Beautiful.
does.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking. So this is the setting where it was. It is the Iona Abbey, the Abbey Church. And we had an installation on the communion table with many sculptures on it, which was also part of the very last service of the week, which was a glow-in-the-dark service. So we had people come to the altar and stand there, and then we turned off all the lights and they could see the glow, and people just didn't want to leave. They just wanted to be there forever. And the poem is walk the path, ring the bell, you will be heard. They go out and ring the bell for others to hear, for justice, for freedom, for the world. And the very last time I was in Iona this August was the very first time I could do something that I wanted to do for last 80 years. I could ring the bell of the Abbey. And now I would like to share some of poems that are ringing the bell for the world. They have been written for a very special year. So I am working with an organization which is called Church Action on Poverty. It is based in Manchester, and they used to be a Christian organization, but now they have become all faiths and none, which I find delightful. And they had their 40th anniversary, and we had a project which was called Dignity, Agency, Power. And we were writing poems together with people with lived experience of poverty, which I have as well from my past. And here are some of the poems from that time, from that year. Poverty is like a bike. It is difficult to balance the less wheels it has. The harder it becomes, I cannot even imagine staying upright on one-wheeled bike. Walking on a mesh. I'm walking on a mesh, a net. I see through it all the way to the rock bottom. The mesh is fragile, and I wonder if it will hold me. There's not much between me and the fall. Through the camper van's window, I see a tent. A family with 3 kids, an ancient Megane parked beside it. It's pouring. The tent flutters in the wind. They watch football in the tent. It must be crowded with 5 in one tent. The kids are having fun. I'm thinking of the parents, how tired they must be. Little hands and feet pressing against the canvas walls. The baby squealing in glee. A torch like a firefly jumping in the tent. It must be late. If I can see its light, it's June in Scotland. The ash tree moves over the tent, casting a leaf or two on a tiny tent like a caress or a blessing. And the soul traveler. She is a soul traveler. She listens to people's stories, the little everyday ones. How someone manages with 1 income and 3 kids. How someone else is just ashamed to use the food bank. How someone is hungry every day. She listens, immersing into people's stories, and lets herself be touched. She is a soul traveler. She walks beside people's souls for a while. And when we do that, when we walk beside people, it can be very, very tough, can be a lot to carry. And I find that it's very important to take care of ourselves, balance, step by step, balance. When the whole way is too much, take just one step, step by step. And this image is of a sculpture, very balanced one, on the communion table in Iona. And behind it is a cross that very much is a symbol of the time of George MacLeod, who started the Iona community in Govan in Glasgow, in a very, very poor area, and then bringing together people who wanted to be religious leaders at that time and people who were unemployed builders and shipbuilders to rebuild the living quarters of the Iona Abbey. And the legend about the cross is very sweet. The legend is that the wife of George MacLeod was looking for a cross for the abbey, and she was going into a silversmith's workplace and saw this one and said, well, could I buy it? And the lady who was working there said, no, you can't. Why not? Well, my husband, who was the silversmith, he died, and he put it into his will that this cross has to go to Iona Abbey. There you go. So she didn't have to buy the cross, and it went to Iona Abbey because somebody had thought of that place when they did their life's work. As George MacLeod very often used to say, if you believe that there are no coincidences that are meaningful, your life is going to be very boring. And here is another one I wanted to share. So this here is a daytime image of the image that has been in the first Advent in the calendar. So it's from a different angle. It's a daytime, so you can really see the ferns that I was talking about behind it. And you can see the sculpture from its side. It also has some organic branches in it. And the story to go with it is, we're all connected, she said. The old and the young, the far and the near, the spiritual and the mundane. It is one. Care for all. And there's another story about where the sculpture is set. So if you would right now be on Iona, in Iona Abbey, if you would be facing this window, if you would look up, you would see on one side a figure of a cat, on the other side a figure of a monkey. Does anyone know what they stand for? So they are an image that is used in several world religions, and they also came into Christianity, especially in the Benedictine tradition, which was one of the traditions which was there in the Iona Abbey. Iona Abbey was Celtic, Scottish, well, first Irish and then Scottish Celtic place, and then Benedictine. Then it fell into ruin during Reformation, and then it was renewed by Iona community by George MacLeod. But these two figures, cat and a monkey, they stand for contemplation and work, for prayer and for activism. And that is very important to me as well as a Iona community member, because Iona community tries to balance being activist. So if you would see a granny paddling out in front of the Trident nuclear submarine that might be a Iona granny. And then also prayer and contemplation. And so you have those two figures. There's a pub on Iona which is for sale. So if I ever have the money to buy it, I will call it the Cat and the Monkey.
Gosh, that's perfect. Oh, Ursula, these are absolute treasures that you offer to us. And as many people are noting here, just listening to your voice and hearing your witness of your life and sharing your art with us is a treasure, an absolute treasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'd love to open it up if anybody